And so where I landed after thinking about that is this truth for myself that I don't trust black people as much as white people. Not proud of that, but there it is. Third example. I was negotiating with my nephew's father. We were deciding when I would have time with my nephew and when my nephew's father would have time with his son. Now, there's a lot more to that story that's not relevant for today. So don't get lost in what? How did that work? Skip all that, because here's the reason I'm telling you this story to you today. Here's the piece that's important. During the negotiation, my nephew's father said to me that he felt an imbalance of power in coming to an agreement on visitation with his son, because he is black and I am white. And when he said that, I thought to myself, he's right. I have every confidence that if my nephew's father was at my house to pick up his son, and for whatever reason, I did not want to let him take his son, I was confident I could call the police and convince the police to leave my nephew in my care. And when I thought about that, I thought, I should really do something to balance the power that I have over my nephew's father, because I have access to white privilege. Did I mention he's black? I have access to white privilege and he does not. And then I realized I like that power. Not only do I like it, I'm going to use it to get what I think is best for my nephew. And so that was my other awareness that my nephew's father helped me get to, is that I will use my access to white privilege not because it's justified, just because I can. Now, I did not see the poison in any of these behaviors until I took the time to look for it. And if I did not put in the time to see the poison, I would have continued to believe that my behaviors were not racist. And it's also true, I can come up with explanations, rationalizations, justifications for my behavior being something other than racism in each of these examples. Yet I choose to accept that my behaviors were racist. And here's why. When I worked for an American Indian organization, and one of my coworkers would name an interaction that they had with a white person as racist, I would immediately dismiss my coworker's characterization of the interaction as racist. I would be thinking to myself, well, it doesn't really feel like racism to me. It was just a misunderstanding. And that misunderstanding, I don't see that it was grounded in racism. And then I thought, well, why do I, as a white cisgender male, think I know more about racism than my American Indian coworker? And so I decided that that whenever my coworker identified an interaction as racist, I would accept that as true and accurate. And when I started doing that, I started to see racism all over the place. So I choose to accept that my behaviors in these 3 examples that I have given, I choose to accept that those were racist, because to attribute the causation of those behaviors to something other than racism blinds me to the reality that people like me who present as white have access to privileges that others do not. And I cannot dismantle what I am unwilling to see. And I need to dismantle my access to white privilege and white privilege globally, because it's too costly to maintain a society that flourishes under white privilege. Okay, there's more to say, but we're going to take a little pause here. And the reason we're going to take a pause, I'm just checking time. The reason we're taking a pause is I want to give you the opportunity to reflect on what you've heard thus far. And you've heard my feelings about small groups, so we're not doing small groups. We're not discussing anything here. We're just going to take a minute. And I invite you, we're going to sit in silence for a minute. And I invite you to think about something, reflect on something that you might have heard, or you can think about something that came up for you as you were listening, or third option, think about whatever you want during this minute. But I'm just going to set my phone, which already went off once, for a minute, and we're just going to sit in silence for a minute to give you, if you choose to take it, the opportunity to reflect on what you've heard thus far. Welcome back. We're going to move forward. There will be time at the end for comments or questions, but not now. Hold on to those reflections, and we're just going to keep going forward here. So, I retired in July. This next story that I'm going to tell you is a work experience that happened to me this past June. I was facilitating the meeting, and a colleague of color pointed out to me in that meeting, her comment was that a fully inclusive, anti-racist work environment will still have people perpetuating racism toward each other. And, you know, that was, well, anyway, I don't know how to explain it. That was an impactful statement in the context of the meeting. And so, as the facilitator, we dropped the agenda, and we took time to really talk more about that comment. And that conversation led me to a where I was feeling on a deep level the unfairness of my white privilege, which totally triggered my white fragility. And so I spent the rest of that meeting not in a very good place. And I'm still leading the meeting. So a few days after that meeting, I was having a hard time feeling good about myself, and not entirely sure why. I knew it was fallout. For those viewing online, well, you know, whatever. You had longer time to reflect. Thank you. Okay. Okay, so I facilitated this meeting. I'm hooked by my white fragility as I continue to lead this meeting, right? Okay, so having a hard time feeling good about myself, not sure why. I knew it was fallout from the meeting, but over time was able to, stuff the experience somewhere in my body where I no longer felt the unfairness. And I started telling myself, my efforts at being anti-racist are enough. I'm doing what I can. I don't really need to do more. And then I got an email from my colleague saying, it was great that you felt the unfairness of your access to white privilege during the meeting. And when you felt that, yes, I think, and when you felt that, you started to ignore me. And other people in the meeting followed your lead. And no one spoke up to say, Paul, you are ignoring our colleague's voice. And that made the room feel less safe for me. Now, I know that wasn't your intent. This is still all in the email. I know that wasn't your intent, but I wanted to make you aware of your impact from your behavior. I wish my intention could excuse my impact, but it doesn't. And I still need to repair the harm of my impact if I'm going to do it. The problem is, I don't know how to repair harm without being confident that I'm not actually causing more harm in my attempt to repair the harm, or am I actually repairing harm? I can't tell the difference. And the reason I can't tell the difference is because I really don't know how to repair harm, because I haven't done it enough. And so when my colleague shared with me that my intention did not match my impact, I was scared. It scares me to attempt to repair harm caused by my impact. Oh, and now I said why? Because I can't tell if I'm really doing it or if I'm just making it worse. In the school of repairing harm, racialized harm, I'm in kindergarten, maybe even preschool, I don't know, but I'm not very far along. Although it's also not an option for me to not repair the racialized harm that I've caused. Because repairing harm is the antidote to the poison. Even a failed attempt at repairing harm weakens the effectiveness of the poison. And so trying to repair harm is the only option for me for moving forward. So I attempt repair. I make mistakes. I'm super awkward. I'm uncomfortable. And I have people willing to teach me. And so I try to learn as much as I can along the way. And I just hope that someday I make it to first grade. Okay, I'll tell one more story, and then we'll open it up for anything you want to do. So this happened to me this week. I go to a yoga studio, and I walk in the door of the yoga studio, and behind the counter is that's where the instructor stands for that class and checks you in. And behind the counter is a person I've never seen at the yoga studio before, and a black woman. And typically, my pattern anyway, is when I get there, I introduce myself to the instructor and tell them my name, ask them their name, and sometimes I've met them before, but I didn't remember. But anyway, that's what I do. I didn't do that. I just went into the studio, the yoga room. I kind of bypassed that thing. And so then, we're doing yoga. Let's jump to after yoga. After yoga, I said to the teacher, the black woman, I said, hey, I really liked your class. I just really appreciated the lessons that you put out there during yoga in addition to doing the yoga, and I really liked your class. And then I started to walk away. I don't know why I'm crying about this, but I started to walk away, and then I turned and I went back and I said, when I came here, I approached you differently because you're black. And I just want to apologize for that. And she was like, tell me more about that. And, I didn't really want to. But I said, my pattern is to go up and introduce myself and, say hi. And I saw you behind the counter, and because you were black, I didn't come up and introduce myself. And we had a little further conversation about that I can't really remember at this point. But I'm sharing that story because I need accountability on this stuff, which is what I talked to her about. Also, I'm trying to dismantle my racist ways, my white privilege, and so I just didn't want to let it go. That's why I'm telling you. And all that stuff I was talking about earlier, I couldn't tell if I was causing more harm. As a matter of fact, as I think about it, I'm thinking, yeah, because she didn't seem to notice, or she didn't know that I was acting any differently than I would act if it was a white person standing behind the counter. So I don't know that microaggression, if that's an okay term to use, I don't know if that reached her or not. But yeah, so I'm still thinking about that. In our conversation, she asked me some other question, and I'm just staring at her, and she goes, well, okay, so that would take a big download. And I said, well, kind of, but here's the short answer, and it doesn't matter what that answer was. But why did I even start this? So she says, you know, when I'm not here, I've worked doing DEI work for 17 years. And so that's why I'm asking these questions, because it's what I do. And I was like, oh. But anyway, I'm still, I don't know. I know I needed to do it for myself. And I guess I'm deciding here in real time. And I need to risk causing harm in order to get more practice at addressing harm. So that's where I'm going to stop. Chris, can you kill the feed?